My name is Rachel Monroe. I'm 29 years old, a freelance graphic designer living in Portland. 4 years I played by the rules, saved every extra dollar, and built a quiet life with quiet dreams. I was finally ready to launch my own creative studio. $10,000 set aside. Every penny earned with late nights and sacrificed weekends. Then one day it was gone. All of it. Drained from my account while I was out of town. And the worst part, it wasn't a stranger. It was my younger sister. And when I confronted her, my parents took her side. Before I tell you how everything unraveled, and how I made them all regret underestimating me, drop a comment, let me know where you're watching from, and hit subscribe to follow this story to the very end. I had always been the planner in my family. The one who budgeted, who cleaned up messes, who never asked for help. At 29, I had finally saved $10,000. Not for a vacation, not for a new car, but to launch the freelance studio I'd dreamed of since college. I lived in a small but cozy apartment in Portland, designing brand identities for local businesses, working late into the night with nothing but coffee and quiet determination keeping me company. So when my agency offered to fly me to Los Angeles for a 5-day creative summit, I didn't hesitate. It was my first real recognition, an all-expenses-paid chance to meet top designers, build connections, and maybe even lock in a few future clients. Packed light, brought my best outfit for the keynote night, left behind everything else, including, stupidly, an old emergency bank card tucked inside a drawer at my parents' house. A card that accessed the account holding all my savings. I hadn't thought about that card in years. My younger sister Chloe still lived with our parents. She was 24, unemployed, and as unpredictable as ever. Beautiful, magnetic, but a constant hurricane. My parents always said she was just sensitive, that she felt things more deeply, that she just needed more time to figure things out. I had stopped arguing a long time ago. When I left for the summit, Chloe gave me a surprisingly warm hug. "Have fun in law," she said with a smirk. "Don't forget about us little people." I laughed, not realizing she'd already made up her mind about what she'd do the moment I stepped on that plane. The summit was everything I'd hoped. Inspiring speakers, portfolio reviews, dinners that felt like something out of a dream. I even walked through Venice Beach one evening, feeling like for once, I was exactly where I was meant to be. When I landed back in Portland Sunday night, I was exhausted but thrilled. I dropped my bags in my apartment and powered up my laptop. I had this little routine: log in, check email, check my balance, then order takeout if the day had gone well. What I saw stopped me cold. My savings account, my $10,000, was gone. Not a mistake. Not a glitch. I clicked frantically into the transaction history. 5 separate withdrawals, each for the daily maximum of $2,000. All made during the days I was in California. All from different ATM machines in our neighborhood back in Oregon. My first thought was identity theft. My second thought was Chloe. I sat back in the chair, the room suddenly too quiet, too cold. A knot in my chest began to twist itself tighter and tighter as I stared at the screen. She wouldn't. Would she? The next morning I called the bank. After verifying my identity and confirming the transactions were made using the physical card and correct PIN, the rep said the withdrawals happened in Southeast Portland, specifically near my parents' block. The same area where Chloe lived. The same place where my emergency card had been sitting, untouched, until now. "Do you want to open a fraud case?" the rep asked. "Not yet," I said. I already knew what I had to do. I drove straight to my parents' house without telling anyone I was coming. It was just after 10 a.m. when I pulled into the driveway. My mom would be at her volunteer shift. My dad was likely out running errands. But Chloe, she rarely woke up before noon. I rang the bell. The door opened slowly. And there she was. Barefoot, wearing a silky oversized hoodie I'd never seen before, nails freshly done, blonde highlights that hadn't been there last week. "Rachel," she blinked. "You're back." I didn't answer. I stepped inside. She didn't stop me. I walked past her straight to the kitchen table and opened my banking app again. "What's going on?" she asked, but her voice trembled. I turned my phone to face her. Her eyes flicked to the screen, then away. And that's when I knew for sure. She had done it. And now it was time for her to tell me everything. Chloe stood frozen at the edge of the living room, her arms folded across her chest, like she could hold herself together with pressure alone. Her posture was casual, but the twitch in her eye and the way her fingers dug into her sleeves betrayed the panic she was trying to hide. She didn't ask to see the phone again. She didn't move closer. And when I stepped forward, she stepped back like I might slap her, even though I had never raised a hand to her in my life. "Where is it?" I asked, my voice sharp but cold. Not angry, beyond angry. "Where's what?" Her voice cracked like dry wood. I clenched my jaw and held up the phone again, the banking app still open, displaying the withdrawals in cold, clear numbers. $10,000 gone. 5 transactions, 5 days, each one at a different ATM in the same neighborhood. All while I had been in Los Angeles. Her lips parted, but no words came. She didn't deny it right away. She didn't say it wasn't her. Instead, she looked away, staring at the wall behind me like maybe there was a version of this conversation where she could disappear into it. "You took the card," I said. "From my desk drawer. The emergency card. The one I haven't touched in years." Her eyes shifted toward the hall, toward the room that used to be mine. That was all the confirmation I needed. "You knew what it was," I continued. "You knew what account it accessed. And you knew the PIN. Didn't you?" I didn't mean to," her words stumbled out in a whisper. I laughed, bitter and flat. "You didn't mean to take the card. Or you didn't mean to take all of it." Chloe swallowed hard, finally looking me in the eyes. Hers were glassy, rimmed with red like she'd already been crying before I arrived. Or maybe she'd just come off a sleepless night, too wired from whatever mess she'd gotten herself into. I just needed a little help, Rachel. Help. My voice rose a notch. I could feel the blood pounding in my ears now, but I forced myself to stay in control. The last thing I wanted was to give her the chance to twist this around. I had seen her do it too many times, watched her cry her way out of consequences while our parents nodded along like she was a misunderstood angel. "You could have asked me," I snapped. "But instead, you stole from me while I was across the country. You emptied my entire savings account. $10,000, Chloe. 10,000. She wiped her face with the sleeve of her hoodie and sat down heavily on the couch, the cushions deflating under her. "I wasn't trying to ruin your life," she muttered. "Then what were you trying to do?" I pressed. "Because you didn't just take it. You blew it. Every dollar. I've already seen the transactions. 5 days. 5 grand withdrawals. What did you spend it on?" She didn't answer. Not right away. The silence stretched between us like a taut string, vibrating with everything she wasn't saying. "Clothes," she said finally, her voice barely audible. "And Vegas." Blinked. "Vegas. Just for a weekend," she said quickly, like that made it better. I needed to get away. I was feeling, I don't know, trapped. I stared at her, unable to comprehend what I was hearing. She wasn't remorseful. She wasn't even embarrassed. She was trying to rationalize it. "You needed a vacation," I said, my voice flat with disbelief. "I was depressed, okay," she snapped. "Everyone's always going on about how great you are, how responsible, how successful. I'm the mess. Get it? I just wanted to feel normal. Like I had something nice for once. With my money." She looked away again. "You didn't just take a piece of it," I continued. "You took everything. Everything I've worked for the past 3 years. The studio I was going to launch. The life I've been building while you've been sitting here doing nothing." She flinched at that. "I'm not doing nothing," she shot back. "I've been trying. I applied to like 5 jobs last month." "And how many did you show up for?" I asked. Silence. That was answer enough. I stood in the middle of the living room, the air thick with tension, the scent of last night's perfume still clinging faintly to her sweater. The kind of perfume that costs $200 a bottle. I recognized the name. I'd seen it in the duty-free store in Lax. Do Mom and Dad know? I asked. Her eyes went wide. Please don't. Oh, they will know, I cut in. And you're going to tell them? Rachel, please, she begged, her hands gripping the hem of her hoodie now. Don't make this worse. They'll freak out. They'll think I don't know, they'll hate me. They should freak out. You should be terrified. She stood suddenly, pacing, arms waving, voice rising. You don't get it. I wasn't thinking straight. I was scared. I'm always scared. I just wanted to escape for a little while. You don't know what it's like being compared to you every day of my life. You don't know what it's like feeling like you'll never be enough. I stared at her. This wasn't new. This was the script she'd rehearsed for years. And it had always worked on them. You want me to feel sorry for you? I asked. You robbed me, Chloe. She sank back into the couch, shoulders slumped, head bowed. I'll pay you back, she whispered. With what money? No answer. And that was when the front door opened. My parents walked in together, shopping bags in hand mid-conversation, until they saw me. Rachel, my mother said, surprise flickering across her face. We weren't expecting you today. My dad followed close behind. Didn't you just get back last night? I turned slowly to face them, the phone still in my hand. We need to talk, I said. My mom frowned, sensing the atmosphere in the room. What's wrong? I held out the phone to her. $10,000. Stolen from my savings account. By Chloe. My mother blinked, the color draining from her face. What? I didn't look away. She used my old emergency card. The one that was in my desk drawer. While I was in law, she withdrew the max every day until it was empty. Chloe stood behind me now, shaking silently. My father looked between us, his expression darkening. Is this true? He asked. Chloe didn't answer. She didn't need to. My mom stepped toward her, eyes wide. Chloe. Chloe nodded slowly, tears beginning to fall again. I was going to pay it back, she said, her voice cracking. I just needed. I didn't know what else to do. The silence that followed was heavy and long. My father turned to me, finally, and said something that stopped me cold. Rachel. You know your sister's been struggling. Blinked. Struggling? I repeated. Are you seriously about to defend her? My mother interjected quickly. No one is defending her. We're just saying. Maybe we can talk about this calmly. Calmly? I snapped. $10,000. And your first instinct is to comfort her. My dad put a hand on my shoulder. Rachel, we'll figure this out. We're a family. Pulled away. Then act like one. But deep down I already knew they wouldn't. They never had before. And that was the moment I realized. This wasn't just about the money. This was about everything they had ignored. Everything they had excused. Everything they had expected me to carry. My mother moved toward Chloe like she might fall apart at any moment, wrapping her arms around her like she was some fragile child who had simply tripped on a crack in the sidewalk. Chloe didn't resist. She leaned in like she was used to being rescued. I stood in place, jaw clenched, as my father set down the grocery bags and turned toward me with that carefully composed look he always wore when he was trying to keep peace. Rachel, he said, you've been working really hard. We all know that. And we're proud of you. I waited, because I already knew what was coming. But your sister. Clearly she's going through something. There it was. I felt my mouth go dry. I could feel the words rising like bile, but I held them back for a few seconds. Let them sit in my throat. She's going through something, I finally said. Are you hearing yourselves? My mom pulled back slightly from Chloe and looked at me. Her eyes full of a mix of sadness and something else. Pity maybe. Or worse, disappointment. Rachel, sweetheart, she's been under so much pressure. Pressure. My voice cracked louder than I intended. She doesn't pay rent. She doesn't have a job. She doesn't have responsibilities. How exactly is she under pressure? My father stepped in quickly. This isn't helping anyone right now. You're both upset. No, I cut in, I'm upset. She's a thief. My mother flinched at the word, like it was too vulgar to be said in her house. Don't call your sister that. Why not? I snapped. That's what she is. If a stranger did what she did, you'd call the police. If it were me who did it to her, you'd throw me out and tell the whole family I betrayed you. That's not true, my dad said, but his voice was already strained. Isn't it? I asked. He didn't answer. And that silence said everything. I turned to Chloe, who was still sitting on the couch, shoulders hunched forward, face buried in her palms like she could disappear into her own regret. What did you even spend it on, Chloe? She looked up at me slowly, her mascara running. Her face had that pale, splotchy redness that came from crying too hard for too long. I just wanted to feel better, she said softly. I stared at her. $10,000. On what? What made you feel better? She hesitated, then began to list it off like a guilty kid confessing to breaking a vase. Clothes. Few nights in Vegas. Hotel drinks, some clubs. I paid for my friends too. My breath caught. You paid for your friends. She nodded, eyes cast down. They've always been there for me. I just wanted to do something nice. I turned to my parents. Did you hear that? She rewarded her friends for being in her life. With my savings. My mother wrung her hands. Rachel, she didn't think this through. Clearly she wasn't in a good place mentally. You're still making excuses. No one's excusing anything. Then where's the accountability? I took a breath, then walked to the dining table, pulling my folder out of my tote. I had printed bank records, had screen captures, had notes. I had come prepared for a war they weren't even ready to fight. I've laid out a repayment plan, I said, opening the folder. I calculated what Chloe could afford if she worked full-time, or even part-time plus something else. My mother stepped closer, concern building. A repayment plan. Yes, I said firmly. It's simple. $500 a month. No interest. No penalties. Just consistency. That's all. Chloe blinked at me like I just suggested she climb Everest. I can't pay $500 a month, she said. Then get a second job, I replied. Sell the things you bought. Those designer shoes. Phone. The handbags. Vegas isn't refundable, but everything else. I can't, she said louder, her voice breaking. You're trying to ruin me. You ruined me, I shouted. I had $10,000. Now I have nothing. My dad held up his hands again. Everyone, please. Let's calm down. I ignored him. This isn't about feelings anymore. This is about money. About theft. About justice. My mom stepped between us, her voice firm now. We'll help her pay. I raised an eyebrow. You'll help her? Yes, she said. We can contribute. $100 a month. I laughed. Actually laughed. At that rate, it'll take almost 9 years. And that's assuming you never miss a payment. My dad tried to reason. Maybe 200. That's still 5 years. It's just money, Rachel, my mother said, her voice tired. Your sister needs you. We need you. I stared at her. I needed you too. I needed you to say this wasn't okay. I needed you to put your arm around me when I found out my life savings were gone. But you didn't. No one said a word. You always said family comes first, I added, my voice quieter now. But apparently that only applies to her. Chloe was crying again. Not loud sobs this time, but small, bitter ones. Her body shook with them. I didn't know it would feel like this, she said. I thought I could fix it before you got back. I crossed my arms. And now? She didn't answer. And that was when I knew I had a choice. Could let it go. Again. I could accept their version of peace. The version where I swallowed it, where I minimized what happened, where I kept showing up every Sunday and smiling like nothing happened. Or I could do something different. I'm giving you until Friday, I said. To agree to the plan. $500 a month. I don't care who it comes from. Chloe, you both doesn't matter. But if I don't have signatures by then, I'm filing a police report. My father's face hardened. You'd call the police on your own sister? I looked him dead in the eye. I would. You know what that would do to this family. Do you know what this did to me? No one answered. I gathered my folder, slid it back into my tote, and walked to the door. You have 3 days. I didn't slam the door. I just let it close behind me. The silence in that house had become too familiar. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel guilty walking away from it. The car ride home was silent. No music, no calls, no thinking really. Just that strange, cold feeling crawling over my skin. The kind that comes after hard truth is spoken out loud. The kind that doesn't let you breathe properly for hours. I parked outside my apartment and sat in the driver's seat for a while, staring at the dashboard like it might give me a different ending. But no matter how many ways I turned it in my mind, the facts stayed the same. Chloe had stolen from me. My parents defended her. And now I was the one who had to carry the burden of deciding how far I was willing to go to make this right. And it shouldn't be that way. I wasn't the criminal. I was the one bleeding. Inside my apartment, everything looked the same. The little houseplants on the windowsill. The framed quote above my desk that said, "Build what you dream." My studio corner with its dual monitors and color-coded sticky notes for client deadlines. The notes look so trivial now. I hadn't even told most of my clients that anything had happened. I stared at the chair where I used to sit and dream about my launch date. My freelance studio, my baby project. I had already chosen a name. Monroe Studio. Minimalist branding with a moody, artistic edge. Something clean. Something mine. $10,000 was supposed to turn that into reality. Now, it was just a number that no longer existed in my account. And everyone who was supposed to protect me had chosen to protect her instead. I sat down and did something I hadn't done in a long time. I opened a blank document and began typing everything. Not just the withdrawals, not just the dollar amounts, but everything. The first time I caught Chloe taking $20 from my wallet in high school. The birthday gift cards that went missing. The time she borrowed my laptop and sold my drawing tablet without telling me. The endless pattern. Cover-ups. Tears. Hugs. The apologies. The repeated excuses. I wrote it all. Every betrayal. Every moment they called her just emotional, while they called me too intense. I included the timestamps from the bank statements. I screen captured every withdrawal and mapped it to the ATM locations near my parents' house. I labeled each with the date and the time. I pulled old photos off social media. Chloe in Vegas, champagne in hand, Gucci bag at her feet. The same weekend I had been attending the summit in Los Angeles, networking and pitching clients, blissfully unaware my money was vanishing in real time. I created a folder on my desktop called Proof. Then I picked up my phone and called Kyle. He was an old friend from college, now an attorney in town. We hadn't talked in months, but when he picked up, his voice still had the same warmth. "Hey, Rachel. Hey, I need your help." I didn't cry when I told him. I didn't shake. I told him everything in order, like reading from a script. "Is there any way to get the money back without pressing criminal charges?" I asked after laying it all out. There was a long pause. "That depends," Kyle said slowly. "You could file a civil suit. But even if you win, there's the question of collection. If she has no assets, you may never see the money. And criminal charges. Grand theft. Definitely. Over 10,000. It would require a police report. The state could pursue it. Possible felony conviction. Jail time. You wouldn't have control over the punishment once it goes to the courts." I rubbed my temple. "So my choices are, sue her and maybe get nothing. Or press charges and possibly send her to jail. You have a third option," he said. "Use the threat of legal action to get a binding agreement. If your family sees you're serious, they might finally cooperate. You think they'll actually take it seriously? If they see the folder of evidence you just told me about?" "Yes." I exhaled slowly. "Can you help me draft it?" "Absolutely. But Rachel, make sure you protect yourself. No more verbal promises. No more emotional manipulation. This time you get signatures. Notarization if you can. I want it airtight. Good, he said. You deserve that. We hung up. And for the first time in days, I felt a flicker of power returning. I wasn't just reacting anymore. I was building something. This time not a design portfolio. Not a business. But a record. Faith. A line in the sand that no one could step over again without consequences. By Friday morning the document was ready. Cal had sent it over, all clean and legal. Repayment agreement between Rachel Monroe and Chloe Monroe. It outlined all terms clearly. Monthly payments of $500. Obligation to find full-time employment within 3 months. Immediate sale of any remaining luxury items purchased with the stolen funds. Failure to comply would trigger further legal action. I printed 3 copies. Then I called my parents and asked to meet. Neutral location. Coffee shop downtown. No more emotionally loaded scenes in the living room. No more unbalanced scales in the house where I was always expected to be the bigger person. They agreed. So I went early. Sat in the corner booth, folder in hand, and waited. When they walked in, Chloe was between them. Eyes red, face pale, hair pulled into a messy bun like she hadn't slept. She didn't speak as they slid into the seats across from me. My mother was the first to speak. Rachel, we're here to listen. Good, I said, and placed the folder on the table. I opened it and passed 1 copy to each of them. My father raised his eyebrows as he began to read. This is very formal, he said. Because this is serious. Chloe didn't touch her copy. I looked directly at her. If you sign this and follow through, I will not press charges. But if you don't, I will not hesitate to file a police report. You've already admitted everything in front of witnesses. I have the bank records. The ATM footage could be pulled in hours. I don't want this to go to court, Chloe. But I'm prepared if it does. She flinched, then slowly reached for a pen. My mother stopped her. Wait, she said gently. Rachel, is there no other way? No, I said. This is me being merciful. This is me giving you the chance to make this right without lawyers or judges. They sat in silence for a long time. And then, without another word, Chloe signed. My mother signed as a witness. My father signed last. I took the copies back, placed them neatly in the folder and stood. As I walked away from the table, I didn't feel victorious. I felt steady. Like for once in my life I had chosen myself. And no one could take that away from me. The coffee shop felt like a courtroom. When I left that morning with 3 signed copies of the repayment agreement tucked tightly inside my folder, I should have felt victorious, vindicated, empowered. But instead I felt numb. Because nothing about it had been satisfying. There was no apology from Chloe. No gratitude from my parents for handling the situation with grace. Just the weight of a pen against paper. And 3 faces filled with shame, anger, and quiet resentment. It hadn't been justice. It had been negotiation under pressure. But it was something. And in a life where I had often been forced to shrink to maintain family peace, something was more than I had ever dared ask for. That evening I returned home and placed the documents in my lockbox. Then I did something I hadn't done in a week. I turned my phone off. Not on silent. Not do not disturb. And for one night, I allowed myself to pretend that this chapter had closed. But it hadn't. Because the next morning a message was waiting when I turned my phone back on. It was from Jessica, my best friend since college, the one person who had stood by me through every twist of this storm. Rachel, you need to see this. Now. Attached was a screenshot. Instagram. Chloe's account. A new story posted the night after the agreement was signed. She hadn't blocked me, just forgotten that I still followed her. Or maybe she hadn't forgotten. Maybe she wanted me to see it. In the story, she was at a rooftop bar with 2 of her friends, the same ones she'd taken to Vegas with my money. Champagne flutes clinking. Glittery city lights in the background. She wore a new dress, tight and shimmery, not the thrift store kind. Expensive. The caption. Life is short. Live it before they make you pay for it. Nail polish #carefree #no regrets. I stared at the screen for a full minute without blinking. My hands clenched around the phone. I couldn't breathe. Not because she had gone out. Not even because she was wearing something that looked brand new. But because after everything, after stealing from me, after sobbing at my feet, after signing a legal agreement, she still didn't care. Or maybe she wanted to prove that she didn't. And if that was the case, she was about to learn what indifference really looked like. Called Kyle. He picked up on the second ring. Please tell me this is the kind of thing that matters, I said without saying hello. What are you talking about? Chloe. She posted on Instagram. Mocking the agreement. Mocking me. I sent him the screenshots. Less than a minute later he called back. This is gold, he said. Do not delete it. Do not confront her. Do not react. Why? Because it shows intent. If this ever goes to court, it shows she never planned to follow through in good faith. It undermines her credibility. It could tip the entire case in your favor if she defaults. So you're saying, let her hang herself? He hesitated. I'm saying let her prove who she is. And meanwhile you keep doing exactly what you're doing. Stay organized. Track payments. Stay professional. She hasn't even made the first payment yet. Then give her the rope. We'll see what she does with it. I hung up, printed the screenshot, and placed it in the folder under a new tab. Evidence of non-compliance. Then I waited. Friday came and went. No payment. No message. Saturday passed. Nothing. Sunday morning I got a text from my mother. Hi sweetie. I know things are tense. But please don't overreact. Chloe's trying. She just needs a little more time. I didn't answer. Monday morning I emailed a payment reminder as per the agreement. It was polite, precise, emotionless. By Tuesday afternoon there was still no payment. So I drove to my parents' house. This time I didn't call first. When I rang the doorbell my father answered. His expression was tired. More exhausted than angry. Rachel, he sighed. We didn't expect you. Clearly. She's not home. That's fine, I said, brushing past him. I didn't come to talk. I came to show. I placed the payment reminder printout on the coffee table. Then the Instagram post. Then the contract. This is what non-compliance looks like, I said. And this is the documentation that will follow her if she defaults. I'm giving her 3 more days. He stared at the papers in silence. Then my mother appeared from the kitchen. What is this? She asked. Proof, I said. That your daughter thinks this is all a joke. My mother glanced at the photo. Her expression faltered. That could have been from a different night. It was time-stamped. It was that night. The night she signed. She sat down looking pale. My father picked up the contract. Rachel, you've made your point. No, I said. Not yet. And then I told them the truth I hadn't planned to tell them yet. That Kyle had already filed a preliminary police report. That the ATM footage had been requested. That if Chloe failed to make a single payment or missed 2 in a row, I would escalate to formal charges. My mother gasped. My father stared at me like he didn't recognize me. This isn't the daughter we raised, he said finally. No, I said. It's not. It's the one you ignored. The one you told to be quiet while the other one was protected. I stood up. And as I walked to the door, I turned back one last time. 3 days. I left without waiting for a response. That night, Chloe called me. I didn't pick up. He texted. Why are you turning them against me? Why are you making this worse? I didn't reply. On the 3rd day, at 11:54 p.m., 6 minutes before the deadline, my payment notification dinged. $500. Paid from an account that wasn't hers. Probably my father's. I forwarded the confirmation to Kyle. Then I opened my calendar and marked the next due date. Because this wasn't over. Not even close. The second payment didn't come. I had hoped, Naively maybe, that the first $500 paid just minutes before the deadline would be the start of something consistent. Maybe she'd understood the weight of the situation. Maybe my parents had finally convinced her. Maybe, for once, the reality of consequences had sunk into Chloe's bones. But 2 weeks later there was no message. No sign of effort. No whisper of repayment. And I didn't chase her. I had learned that lesson long ago. When you start chasing people who owe you something, they start to believe you are the problem. So I waited. I marked the missed deadline in red on my spreadsheet. Then, without flinching, I emailed the formal notice of non-compliance to Chloe's email and CC'd my parents. It was cold, brief, and written like it had been drafted by someone who had never loved her at all. Which, at that moment, was closer to the truth than I wanted to admit. 5 hours after I sent the notice, my phone rang. I let it ring. Voicemail. Then a second call. Dad this time. I still didn't pick up. Then the third call. Chloe. I hesitated. And picked up. Her voice hit me like a whirlwind. Panicked, breathless, already in mid-sentence like she'd been rehearsing it in her head for hours. You can't do this, Rachel. I swear I was going to pay. I was just waiting for a freelance check to come in. It's late. I didn't forget, okay? I didn't say anything. Rachel, when is the payment coming? I asked. End of the week. And what about the one after that? Silence. Then quietly. I don't know. Exhaled. Then this is your second and final warning. One more missed payment and I file. You don't mean that. I do, Chloe. This isn't you, she said, her voice rising. You're not like this. You're not cold. You're not, what, some kind of robot lawyer now? No, I said. I'm the person you stole $10,000 from. That shut her up. I gave you a chance to fix this quietly. You're the one ignoring it. You're the one choosing this path. You're enjoying this, she said suddenly, her voice trembling. Admit it. And blinked. What? You like seeing me struggle. You like being the one in control. I almost laughed. I liked having my savings, I said. I liked believing that I could trust my family. She hung up. I stared at the screen, heart pounding. Not from anger. From clarity. She still didn't get it. She thought this was about punishment. About dominance. She didn't understand that this coldness she accused me of, wasn't born out of pettiness. It was protection. Because if I let her twist this one more time, if I gave in, if I allowed myself to flinch, then the pattern would return. And this time it would eat me alive. 3 more days passed. No payment. Filed. Formally. The same morning, Kyle and I submitted the completed report to the Portland Police Department. We included the signed agreement, screenshots of the missed deadline reminders, social media posts, text logs, and the original bank statements. It wasn't just a case anymore. It was a portfolio. Timeline of betrayal. I didn't expect them to act fast. But that afternoon, I received a voicemail from a detective. They had opened an investigation. Chloe was officially listed as a suspect in a felony theft case. And just like that, everything shifted. My mother showed up at my apartment. She didn't call first. I opened the door to find her standing there, raincoat damp, hair pulled back, eyes tired. Please don't do this, she said before I could say a word. I stepped aside. She walked in like she was stepping onto foreign ground. Like she wasn't sure she was welcome anymore. She wasn't wrong. I begged you both, I said as she sat down. You told me she needed time. I gave it to her. Now she's out of it. Rachel, this could ruin her. I nodded. It could. Do you want that? I looked at her. And for the first time, I saw someone who was beginning to understand what it meant to be on the other side of Chloe's gravity. No, I said. But I want me back. And if this is the only way, then yes. I want her to face this. My mother stared at her hands. Then quietly, she's been gambling. My stomach turned. How long? We don't know. She said a year. Maybe more. So she took the money to pay off debts. Some of it, she said. But she spent most of it before she even admitted she was in trouble. Closed my eyes. So it wasn't just a whim. It was addiction. Secret addiction. And they'd kept it from me. You still should have told me, I said. We didn't know until after Vegas. I believed her. But that didn't change anything. My mother reached into her purse and pulled out an envelope. Inside was a check for $1,500. This is what we could put together quickly, she said. Please, can we stop this now? I stared at the check. It wasn't restitution. It was a bribe. Plea. A band-aid on a wound that had already turned septic. She still hasn't said sorry, I whispered. She's ashamed. She should be. I handed the check back. Keep it. Put it toward her legal fund. Rachel, don't be cruel. This isn't cruelty, I said. This is clarity. And for the first time in my life, I'm not apologizing for it. She stood slowly. And for a moment I thought she might cry. But she didn't. She just nodded and walked out. And I closed the door behind her, quietly. No slamming. No final words. Just the sound of a lock turning. For the first time in my life, I was standing on the other side of the line they had drawn years ago. And I wasn't crossing it again. The thing about family is, you never expect them to show up as strangers. But that's exactly how it felt when I walked into the police station for the first official interview with the detective assigned to the case. Fluorescent lights, gray walls, a manila file already waiting on the desk with my name on the label. Detective Anderson was calm. In his 50s maybe, with a weathered face and eyes that had probably seen too many people break each other in all the wrong ways. He didn't treat me like a sister. He treated me like a victim. And somehow that hit harder than I thought it would. I sat across from him, my folder on the table, filled with labeled tabs and receipts. I had even brought a printed timeline, color-coded with corresponding exhibits. You weren't kidding, he said as he flipped through the evidence. I'm an accountant, I replied. I live for documentation. He smiled faintly, but there was a shadow behind his professionalism. I've seen a lot of theft between strangers, he said. But it always feels heavier when it's family. Feels? I asked. You still love her, don't you? I didn't answer. Because what kind of answer could explain the ache in my chest every time I pictured Chloe at age 6, wrapped in her Batman blanket, sneaking into my room because she was afraid of thunder? Detective Anderson flipped through the Instagram screenshots. This one, he said, tapping on the caption. #no regrets. Yes, I said. He made a low noise in his throat. Do you believe she understands what she did? Intellectually, yes, I said. Morally, not even close. He nodded and continued taking notes. When I left the station, it was raining. Course it was. It always rains when the weight of the world finally decides to press its thumb on your shoulder. But I didn't flinch. I walked to my car, slid into the driver's seat, and let the drops streak across the windshield without turning on the wipers. Chloe was officially under investigation now. Not just a suspect, but a name in a case. An adult who had committed a felony. A person the state of Oregon had labeled accused. I hadn't expected the nausea that came with that label. Because it didn't just make her a criminal. It made me the one who put her there. And when the news reached my parents, it only got worse. The next morning I woke up to 21 missed calls. From Mom. 4 from Dad. The rest. Unknown numbers. And 1 voicemail. You heartless bitch. She's your sister. How can you do this to your own blood? No name attached. No number either. Just venom. Probably one of her friends. Or someone who only knew her side of the story. The guilt rolled in like a tide, hot and dizzying. But then I remembered the bank statement. The empty savings account. The launch date for Monroe Studio that I had pushed back again. And I swallowed the guilt like bitter tea. Later that afternoon Kyle called. She's been formally contacted, he said. Anderson said she's scheduled to come in for questioning by the end of the week. And if she doesn't, warrant. I stared at the floor. Do you think she'll show? I don't know, he said. But I know this, her attorney already called. She has a lawyer. Apparently her parents hired one. A pretty aggressive one too. I felt something twist in my chest. So now I'm the enemy. You always were, Kyle said gently. The moment you stopped playing the role they gave you. It was true. Because the next call wasn't from a friend or my sister. It was from my father. And this time I answered. Rachel, he said, voice taut. We need to meet. Why? Because you're ripping this family apart. I almost laughed. I didn't steal $10,000. No, he said. But you're willing to throw your sister in prison over it. I'm willing to ask the state to hold her accountable, I corrected. She had every chance to fix this. So that's it then, he snapped. No forgiveness. She didn't ask for forgiveness. She asked for escape. There was silence. And then, we raised you better than this. No, I said. You raised me to endure. I'm done enduring. I hung up before he could respond. The next day a letter arrived. Formal legal correspondence. From Chloe's attorney. Requesting a settlement negotiation to avoid further legal action. They offered to pay back the full amount over 10 years. With no penalties for default. No legal consequences if payments were missed. Just a polite plea wrapped in legal jargon that basically said, please make this go away. I printed it, filed it under insults, and sent back one line in response. The agreement she signed remains in effect. Within an hour my mother called again. I didn't answer. That night I stared at my ceiling, wondering how a girl who once shared a bedroom with her little sister, who built pillow forts and braided her hair and sang her to sleep, could become someone who had to defend herself in court against her own blood. I didn't cry. I just stared. At the dark. At the quiet. At the version of my life where none of this had happened. But that version was gone. Burned to the ground. And now all I had was the truth. And the paperwork to prove it. The courtroom was still 2 weeks away. But the battle had already begun. I could feel it in the way people looked at me. Not just the ones who knew. Even strangers on the street seemed to hesitate, to glance twice, as if they could smell something broken in me. As if they knew I was the kind of person who filed criminal charges against her own sister. I stopped going to the coffee shop near my apartment. I canceled lunch plans with Jessica. I shut off social media completely. Not because I was ashamed, but because I was tired. So tired of having to explain what no one really wanted to understand. That setting boundaries doesn't mean you're cruel. That seeking justice doesn't mean you're heartless. That sometimes, choosing yourself means losing everyone who taught you to put them first. The silence in my apartment grew thick. My fog. My grief. Until one afternoon there was a knock at my door. I didn't answer it right away. I watched through the peephole. It was Chloe. Alone. No mascara. No fancy clothes. No smug smile. Just a plain sweatshirt, sleeves pushed up, hair in a messy knot. Her face pale. Her lips tight. She looked like someone who had run out of words before even starting. I opened the door without saying a word. We stood there, mirror images of pain. Hers internal, mine bone deep. Can I come in? She asked. I stepped aside. She sat on the edge of the couch, hands trembling in her lap. Her eyes scanned the apartment like it was the first time she'd really seen it. Plants. The stack of unopened envelopes on the table. The coffee mug I'd forgotten to wash. This is nice, she said softly. I didn't respond. She sighed, then reached into her pocket and pulled out something small. A silver bracelet. My bracelet. From high school. The one Grandma gave me before she passed. I pawned it, she said. But I got it back. Took me 3 weeks. I stared at it in her hand. Then took it gently and placed it on the table. Why are you here, Chloe? Her shoulders sagged. Like she'd been bracing for that question. Because I need to say something. And you don't have to say anything back. I have to say it. Waited. She swallowed hard. You were always the one who cleaned up. You picked up my messes and they never asked how you were doing. They just expected you to be okay. And when you weren't, They acted like you were the problem. I didn't move. I was jealous of you, she admitted. Not just because you had it together, but because everyone thought I was fragile and you were strong. But what I didn't realize was that made you invisible, and me the center of every disaster. Her voice cracked. I didn't take your money because I hated you. I took it because I thought it was the only way out. I didn't care who I hurt. I didn't think past the moment. I've never had to. Because Mom and Dad always made excuses for me. I turned slightly. Not toward her. Just enough to breathe. I'm not asking you to forgive me, she said. I know you probably never will. I'm not even sure I deserve it. I looked at her now. Really looked. Her hands were shaking. Her eyes red. And for the first time in years, there was no performance. No dramatics. Just rawness. I started going to meetings, she said. For gambling. For money issues. I've been sober 6 weeks. Congratulations, I said. My voice was hollow. Not cold. Just skinny. I paid back the last 500 on Friday. And blinked. You did. She nodded. Not from Dad's account. From mine. From a temp job. I'm working at a logistics warehouse. 3rd shift. I didn't know what to say to that. So I said nothing. She stood slowly. Then reached into her other pocket and slid a folded letter onto the table. This is for the court, she said. And this one's for you. What is it? My statement. And my decision. I raised an eyebrow. I'm not going to fight it anymore, she said. I told my lawyer to withdraw any request for delay. If the state decides to move forward, I'll accept the plea. I'll take the record. I'll take the restitution plan as is. My chest ached. Why? She looked me in the eyes. Because I finally realized I'm not the only one who's been hurt. And for once, I want to do the right thing. Not because it fixes anything, but because it's time. She walked toward the door. Then turned. You may not believe this, she said, voice quiet. But losing you scared me more than jail. And then she left. I stood there for a long time after. The bracelet on the table glinted under the light. And the letters. One addressed to the court. One to me. I opened the one for me. Handwritten. The handwriting was messy. Uneven. Dear Rachel. I don't know how to say I'm sorry in a way that makes up for anything. But I know this. Losing your trust hurt worse than anything I felt. Worse than the withdrawals. Worse than waking up in debt. Worse than any fight with Mom and Dad. Because deep down, I knew I'd broken something that might never be whole again. I don't expect you to forget. I don't even expect you to believe that I'll change. But I am trying. I swear to God I am trying. I still see us in the backyard sometimes. You building sandcastles. Me knocking them over. And you, always rebuilding. Like it didn't hurt. You shouldn't have had to keep rebuilding because of me. I'm sorry I made you carry that weight. Love, Chloe. I folded the letter carefully, placed it back in the envelope, and cried. Not because I forgave her. Not because it fixed everything. But because it was finally real. No more excuses. No more pretending. Just truth. And for the first time in a long time I didn't feel alone with it. The courtroom wasn't what I expected. No sweeping oak benches. No dramatic lighting. No gavel echoing through a marble chamber. Just dull carpeting, rows of wooden seats, and a faint buzz from the fluorescent lights above. Everything felt small, subdued, like the place had been designed not for justice, but for containment. Emotions. Consequences. People. I arrived 15 minutes early. Not because I was nervous, but because I couldn't bear to be late for something that had taken a year from me. Kyle met me in the hallway, his suit crisp, his expression unreadable. You ready? He asked. I didn't answer, just nodded. This wasn't about readiness anymore. This was about completion. The courtroom doors creaked open and we walked inside. Chloe was already seated with her attorney, Jeffrey Crawford. Tall, stiff, and so sharply dressed it made my teeth hurt. He barely acknowledged me. Chloe glanced up once. Her eyes met mine for a second before lowering again. No tears. No panic. Just silence. Her expression was different now. Older somehow. Less fragile. More aware. Her hair was pulled back in a tight ponytail. Her clothes were modest. No flashy brands, no eyeliner smudged from crying. I wondered how long she had been holding her breath, waiting for this day to come. Judge Reinard entered the room, a woman in her 60s with short silver hair and a voice that could slice through concrete. She didn't waste time. We're here for the final disposition of case No. 22 to 746. Monroe v. Monroe. The irony was bitter. My last name twice. One as the plaintiff. The other as the defendant. Blood facing blood. The clerk read the charges aloud. Felony theft. Fraud. Unauthorized use of a financial instrument. I stared ahead. Hands folded. Heart steady. This wasn't about revenge anymore. This was about recognition. Of what had been done. Of what had been lost. Kyle stood and presented our position. Calm, professional, supported by a mountain of documentation. He recounted the timeline, the evidence, the failed payments, the broken agreement. Then he placed Chloe's handwritten letter on the desk and said, "The victim does not seek incarceration. She seeks acknowledgement. And restitution." It was the kindest thing he could have said on my behalf. Chloe's lawyer rose next. His tone was apologetic, formal, deliberate. "Miss Monroe accepts full responsibility," he said. "She has begun therapy, attended addiction recovery meetings, and secured full-time employment. She does not contest the charges. She asks only for the court's consideration in sentencing." Judge Reinard studied us both. Me, the sister who saved. Chloe, the sister who stole. "I read the statement from the victim," the judge said finally. "And I reviewed the defendant's recent compliance. It is rare to see a case handled this thoroughly outside of the criminal system before arriving in this courtroom." She turned her gaze to Chloe. "Miss Monroe, do you have anything to say?" Chloe stood. No theatrics, just breath. Then words. "I don't expect sympathy," she said, voice soft but steady. "But I want you to know that I understand now. Not just what I did but what it meant. I didn't just take money. I broke something in my sister. And she didn't owe me kindness, but she still gave me a chance." She looked at me. Really looked. "I'm not asking for that chance again. I'm just here to own what I did." Finally. Judge Reinard nodded slowly. "Very well." The ruling was clear. Chloe would be sentenced to 3 years probation. Mandatory continuation of addiction treatment. Monthly restitution payments of $500, tracked and enforced by the court. Community service totaling 200 hours. And a criminal record for felony theft, with eligibility for reduction to misdemeanor upon successful completion of all terms. No jail. But not a clean slate either. It was, by all definitions, accountability. And for the first time in months, my body unclenched. The judge turned to me before closing. "Miss Monroe," she said, "this court recognizes that forgiveness and justice are not mutually exclusive. Thank you for handling this process with integrity. I hope you continue to heal." I didn't expect that. But it cracked something inside me. Because it was the first time someone with authority had acknowledged what this had cost me. Not just the money, but the energy, the isolation, the burden of being the only one to do what no one else would. Court adjourned. Papers shuffled. People moved. Kyle touched my shoulder gently. "It's done." But it wasn't done. Not yet. Chloe stepped toward me in the hallway. Cautiously. Respectfully. She didn't ask to hug me. Didn't cry. She just said, "Thank you. For not letting me run." I nodded. "Thank you," I said, "for finally standing still." She gave a weak smile. Then left with her lawyer. And just like that we were two sisters again. But no longer tethered to the roles we had been forced into for decades. I walked out into the afternoon light. The sun was soft. Not warm, not cold. Just present. I took a deep breath and let it fill me slowly. And in that moment, for the first time in a long, long time, felt free. Not because I'd won, but because I'd stopped losing. And that was more than enough. 6 months passed. The world didn't spin any differently. The sun still rose over the Willamette River each morning and set behind the skyline of Portland like it had 1,000 times before. But something inside me had shifted. I was no longer waking up with my fists clenched under the pillow. I didn't flinch when I saw an envelope in the mail. I didn't feel that flash of heat in my chest every time my phone buzzed with a message I hadn't asked for. I had started to breathe again. Not just survive, but live. The restitution payments came in like clockwork now. $500 every month, sometimes on the first, sometimes by the third, but always there. Chloe hadn't missed one since sentencing. The court system tracked everything. It wasn't my responsibility anymore. And letting go of that alone had felt like lifting a mountain off my back. I didn't talk to her often, but I saw her sometimes. She'd message once in a while. Not to beg, not to explain, but just short texts like, "Finished my 3rd month of meetings. Got a raise at the warehouse. Temp jobs now permanent. Saw your billboard design on Burnside. It looks amazing." I never sent long replies. Just polite acknowledgements. Measured. Boundaries. I had learned that word in therapy. Boundaries weren't walls. They were doors you locked when you needed peace. And they weren't cruel. They were survival. And for once, I was surviving in a way that felt less like treading water and more like walking forward. My business, Monroe Studio, finally launched in March. Months later than planned. But on my terms. I didn't hire a team. I didn't throw a party. I didn't post some grand reveal. Just opened my laptop one quiet Monday morning, finalized the last client brief, and bought the domain. MonroeStudio.design. Simple. Clean. Exactly how I wanted it. Clients came slowly at first. Word of mouth mostly. Referrals. A few reposts on LinkedIn. But the work spoke for itself. And for the first time, I didn't undercharge just to prove I was worthy. I knew what I was worth now. And no one, not a client, not a parent, not even a sister, could take that from me again. My parents came around eventually. Or at least tried. They had been quieter since the court date. Unsure of their footing. Afraid to say the wrong thing. Which, ironically, was the most respectful thing they'd done for me in years. On my birthday in April, they sent a card. Inside was a check, not for restitution, not for guilt, just a birthday gift. And a note in my mother's handwriting that simply read, "We're sorry for what we didn't see. We're proud of what you didn't let break you. Love, Mom and Dad." I didn't cry. But I folded it carefully. And placed it in the same folder that used to hold my evidence. Not because I needed proof anymore. But because some pages matter more when they come after the damage. Then, one Saturday in May, Chloe showed up at my apartment building. Unannounced. Again. But this time she didn't come up to the door. She stood at the edge of the sidewalk, holding a small paper bag and staring up at my window like she wasn't sure if she should wave. I was standing in the kitchen, watering my basil plant. Saw her. And after a long pause, I grabbed my keys and went downstairs. "Hey," she said, voice cautious. "Hey." She held up the bag. "For you." Took it. Inside was a small ceramic mug. Made. Glazed navy blue with uneven ridges and little flecks of gold in the clay. Not perfect. Not polished. But real. And warm in my hands. "You made this." She nodded. "It's from a pottery class I started. I'm trying new things." I turned the mug over. At the base, in tiny cursive, it read, "Arm." My initials. Not hers. Mine. I looked up. "Thank you." She nodded again, then took a step back. "I'm not staying. I just wanted to give it to you." I hesitated. Then said, "Do you have time for coffee?" Her eyes widened. Hope flashed across her face like sunlight through storm clouds. "Yeah. If you want." We sat outside. No dramatic reunion. No emotional outburst. Just two women sipping coffee from separate mugs on opposite sides of a table. Do you still go to meetings? I asked. She nodded. Twice a week. Tuesday and Friday. And the warehouse. Still there. They offered me a supervisor role last week. Smiled. Good. You're earning it. She looked down. I wish I could take it back. You can't. She nodded. But you can keep doing better, I said. That's what matters now. A breeze passed between us. Gentle. Uncomplicated. Like we were no longer sisters defined by conflict, but two people who had grown separately. Painfully. Necessarily. After she left, I sat alone for a while, watching the people walk by. Lovers. Children. A man carrying a dog in a backpack. Normal life. Unfolding. And for the first time I didn't feel like I was standing outside of it anymore. I looked down at the mug in my hand. Flawed. Made. And beautiful in its imperfection. Just like this moment. Just like healing. Just like me.